tackle this college question, and this is going to be a critical one for us about opportunity costs. First thing I'm going to do, though, is print preview and just show you. I've got question 5. It's 4 pages deep. And when I go from page 1 to page 2, notice I have all this blank white space here. I've got no row headers to indicate what any of this might be. It looks kind of garbagey. I've got an NPV model that just happens to be on page 3. And then page 4 doesn't seem to give me much of anything. Again, I'm missing row headers here. If I was to show you that under page break preview, when I went ahead and set it up, notice that the income statement just happened to break there to there, which allowed me to put this gray line separator in here. And I got pages 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, I got all this dead space and it wasn't printing well. So we'll deal with that at the end. But first, let's tackle this problem. So you go to college, which is the difference between when you go to college and none. If you go to college, it's going to cost you in year 1, $25,000, and then the same thing for the 4 years that you go to college. What would have happened if you hadn't gone to college? In that first year, you would have expected to, no college, make a salary of $30,000. But you would have expected a cost of living increase so that that $30,000 previous year multiplied by parentheses 1 plus that growth rate suggests by the end of the second year with your modest raise, you would have been making $30,900. If we extend that analysis to the time that we're 30, we can see by the end of time that we are making just shy of $43,000 by taking, again, the previous year multiplied by 1 plus the rate. If you're not sure that your year 13 is your 30th year, because that sounds weird. 18 to 30 sounds like 12 years, but if you count it out properly, if this was our 18th year and we wanted to know how old we were by the end of this thing, because of an inclusive range, your actual age is 30 in year 13 when you started off in college or in the workforce when you're 18. So just to clarify that. Okay, so now if you go to college, now you got to go ahead and get a job that's going to require you to pay for some laundry. So for these first 4 years, you're taking laundry home or dropping it off for someone else to do. But once you're in your white-collar job, a horrible racist-sounding name, I suppose, at this point, but it's meant because you wear a white shirt, and then you have to get those white shirts laundered, and it costs you $1,000 a year. We got the tax rate notated down before. It says in here, though, we should also take into consideration that, it costs money to go to college, and you could have used this $25,000 to invest. And if so, you would have earned a 5.5% interest rate or opportunity cost of capital. But here's the good news. When you graduate from college, you should make $55,000. You're starting then in your first year after college, which would be year 5 of your analysis. And then you get a nicer raise of 5%, but the formula is the exact same, equals previous times 1 plus growth, so that by the end of our 30th year here, which is year 13, you're making $81,000 versus $42,000, which would seem to be a sufficient reason to go to college. Let's go ahead and make sure we model then in this tax rate. I thought I mentioned that I put it in, but I lied, so let's make sure we get it in. If EBT is less than $50,000 per year, then we're going to pay 20%, and if EBT is more than 50,000, we'll pay the 20%, and that will be true all throughout the life. Okay, until age 30, and hopefully we'll live a lot longer than that. All right, first thing we have to do is think about, what do we give up by not going to college? Well, specifically in year 1, then, you would pay a salary, or get paid a salary of $30,000. You're going to lose that, but you'd also pay tax. Let's use an if formula there to account for the fact that the tax rates will vary, and here's how. Equals if. When we look at this salary number, which for us is also equal to EBT because we have no other expenses here, if that number is less than $50,000, then we want to take that number and multiply it by 20%, comma, If not, we take that number and multiply it by 30%. So therefore, we're going to pay, according to this, less than $50,000. We actually just built that wrong. If it's less than $50,000, multiply C25 to C18. That's correct. Otherwise, but that's not. It shouldn't be. Oh yeah, it is. Look at that. Hey, 30,000 times 20,000. Let's see if it worked. Yeah, it's 6,000. We did that just fine. So your net income is just going to be 30,000 minus the 6,000. So you would have made $24,000 in your first year. Let's check and see if that tax formula works correctly for us all through the end. If we copy and paste, we see that last year we're making $42,000, which is less than 50. So we should be getting taxed at a 20% rate. So let's just test it. 20% of 42 should be 85.54, and it is indeed. So our tax formula worked well. And the idea would be, when you went to college, you give up then at least $100,000 worth of money that you could have earned if you would have invested otherwise. That's the idea of marginal. But let's go ahead and put that marginal idea together and compare it to our with college investment. If we went to college in our first year, we make no salary. And luckily, we would also pay for no laundry. But our EBT would be our salary minus our laundry, which is 0. And then I'll re-execute this tax formula just so you can see it again. Equals if. This time, because we have expenses, we look at EBT, and we look to see if it's less than $50,000, comma, and if it is, we multiply that EBT times the 20%, comma, otherwise we multiply that EBT times the 30%. Let's see how that goes for us. So here's what we know. We're making nothing during our first 4 years of college, but then things get exciting. So let's copy and paste this over and just see what it looks like. So in that next year, you're going to make $55,000, which is great. You spend $1,000 on laundry, which means you have $54,000. That $54,000 then says we should be taxed at that higher rate. So let's just test it and make sure we get 16.2. Yeah, that's the amount of our tax. So that in year 1, our income statement would be EBT minus that big tax number. We're making $37,800 in total, which is nice compared to our non-collegiate net income. It's already over $10,000 more. Let's copy and paste that over, and then just we'll test the end once more, so that by the end we're making $81,260. We subtract off the 1,000. That leaves us with $80,260, for which we have to pay that higher tax rate. I could test it. What if I took that $80,260 times that higher tax rate? Indeed, it's $24,000, which means then we have a net income of $56,182 at the end. Put it all together in our net income model, and the first thing we have to do is drop our periods in here. We're going to go out through period 13, so I'll put the 0 in first, and then I'll fill series with defaults. That should take me to period 13. Our rate we notated up above was a constant 5.5%. What are our cash flows in any period? It's going to be equal to the salary that we would have earned. So we earn nothing in that first period. Then, what else is it equal to for our cash flows out? Well, our cash flows out would be any laundry, which we're not paying for while in college, thanks Mom, plus any tax, which we don't have to pay because we're not making any money, plus then we also need to pay for college, which in period 0, luckily we're not paying anything. But here is the big thing that we have to also add on to our cash flows out, is the idea that we would lose our net income, pardon, just that cell, from that first year. So in that first period 0, it doesn't look like much, but let's copy and paste this over just for one period and see what happens. So, oops, we pointed the wrong one. I need my income statement with college here. So in year 1, I make no income because I'm in college, but in year 1, I would pay no laundry, no tax. I would also pay $25,000 and then I lose $24,000 by not going to work. So the opportunity cost of that analysis says that first year of college actually costs you like $49,000, the 24 that you lose and the 25 you actually pay. So if you look at college, for example, by that last year, you're still not paying laundry or tax. You're still paying $25,000 for room, board, etc. And now you're losing 26 grand. So that by that last year, it's like you're spending $51,000 to go to college. Know that cash flows net is always just in minus out. So if we look at these things over time, what we see is the value without present value adjustment of your college investment is like $200,000. Not just the 100 for what you paid, but also the money that you lost. But let's look at why we go to college. So again, if I copy and paste this over, this time I make $55,000, which is great. But now look at what my total costs are. I lose the $1,000 for laundry. I lose my tax. And then I'm still not making what I could have made otherwise. So that's still an opportunity cost. I'm really only making a couple of thousand more dollars by going to college. So I'm really only making $10,000 more than I could have in my 5th year. So let's copy and paste that over and see if it makes sense in my last year then. In my last year, I make $81,000. It cost me the $1,000 for laundry and the $24,000 in tax, and I don't get this, which I could have had otherwise, so that would be the opportunity cost. So I'm really only making $21,000 more dollars in that last and final year. Why is the number so much different? It's not just this 81,000 minus the 42. It's not just your salary differential, but I also have to take the tax differential in here. I'm paying $16,000 more in tax. So if I pay $24,000 now and I would have only paid $8,000, look at that. That's like $15,000 in tax. So how much more do I actually make? Only like, 22 something. And then if I go ahead and take that 22 and subtract off the laundry, well, lo and behold, this is the marginal benefit of going to college. And again, we're only doing through age 30. So I'll delete that scratch work. That was just to prove to you. And let's get back down to my NPV model. Because now I know that the present value, and I'll go to formulas, financial, PV, of a rate that's fixed, so I'll put my dollar signs around it. When my number of periods are going to be relative, I'm starting in column B. I'm going to move through payment and get to future value, which is always my cash flows net. And then I'm going to click OK, and then remember that I'm going to switch the signs to Trick Excel, and let's just see how that worked one period out. So because it's a year later, the net present value of your first year of college isn't $49,000. It's really more like a $46,000 investment. That when we do present valuation of your 4 years, while we said it was originally $200 in finance, it's really only $175,000 loss, but that's still a significant investment. Let's copy and paste that all the way to the end. So we see that by the end of your time, while you were making that marginal $21,967 by age 30, on present value terms, it's really only worth like $10,950. So let's add all those things up as we sum up the present values. And when we sum up the present values in row 42, what we end up seeing is you actually lose $88,541 by going to college. Our IRR, and this is why we have to do the print layout like this, if we do equals IRR, and then we highlight just the cash flows net that are always in sequence, there's no breaks in them, and we close that parenthesis, what it suggests is that the return on investment for college through age 30 is negative 4.52%. That may be dispiriting, but this is only if we did it through 30. Imagine if we did it through 40. My guess is we would probably see it prove out. But before we do that, let's look at the print piece. So here's my page 1. Here's my dead space on page 2. Page 3 looks okay. Page 4, not so much. So I'm going to go into page break preview. And from there, I see where my obvious breakpoint is. So I'm going to insert a column over here. And then I'm going to go over and highlight all of my work that gives me my labels and attach it there. I don't need these on there because there's no information, so I'll just take them off. And I'm going to check my column width as 20 and make sure that my column width is the same over here so that it'll print nicely. Then let's go ahead and do the same thing with these over here because we're going to need those as row headers. And then lastly, let's do the same for the NPV model, but we're only going to do through PV since the NPV and IRR don't need labels. And now I have something that should look better, but when I print preview it, page 1 looks okay. Page 2 has these nice row headers on it. It's got this dead space I don't like though. Page 3 looks okay. Page 4 looks much better. Let's clean up the dead space, and here's how I'm going to do it. First thing I'm going to do is put my cursor up here into A1. Then I'm going to highlight through the bottom of page 1. I let go of my keyboard. I'm going to hold down Control and click on Assumptions here. And now I'm just going to highlight those values, not including that dead space. And I let go of the Control and the left arrow. I'm going to scroll down using my mouse that time. Hold down Control again. I highlight, not there, but there. And I want all this to come with me into my print. I just goofed up. I'm going to start over. Put my cursor up into A1. Shift, holding it down through here. Let go. Holding down Control through here. Pull it down. Let go. Scroll down. Hold down Control here. Over to there. Let go. Control up to here. Hold it down. Left mouse, let go, and then we go to page layout, print area, set print area. Notice it gave me 4 pages still, but it took this gray, or put this gray area in and took the white out, so that if I make it normal view and I print preview it, let's see, I've got my problem, I've got my headers and my footers. When I go to page 2, no dead space anymore, everything nicely labeled. There is a gap there because of not having any information here, but I'm not over bothered by that. Page 3, I've got my NPV model, and then page 4, a nicely labeled finish. And that is the conclusion. So college ain't worth it if you die when you're 30, but if you stick with it, we can play in class on how to make sure you can get the returns that you need.